Hi, I'm Rose, and this is Rose Colored Movies, and today I'm going to play Script Doctor, this time with the Barbie movie. I was seriously disappointed with the Barbie movie. I was hoping for light and happy, but instead got annoying and preachy. So I'm doing another installment of my series where I suggest fixes for movies. So first I'll talk about the Barbie movie and how I think it failed, and then I'll go through how I think it could have been better. Now, criticizing the Barbie movie is a hazardous thing to do for a girl. Hidden inside that innocuous pink exterior is a feminist battle cry. Denouncing the Barbie movie pronounces me a traitor to my kind, an enemy of women. I'm not sure I'm even allowed to criticize the Barbie movie. However, I am a woman, and I state that I am a feminist in that I believe in the skills and value of women. Hence, as a woman and a feminist, I state that I can dislike this movie on its own merits. If you try to silence my opinion, you are also trying to silence a woman, and how dare you? I declare then, by the right of feminism, my right to criticize this piece of crap. I was actually a big fan of Barbie as a kid. I didn't have a ton of Barbie dolls, no car, no dream house, but I had a handful of Barbies and their clothes, and I loved their dresses. My favorite was actually Astronaut Barbie. She had sparkly silver leggings and a magenta space uniform. Never let it be said that Barbie was not aspirational, as I later became a science nerd. That astronaut Barbie was important to little me. Flash forward 30-odd years, and adult me is purchasing a ticket for the Barbie movie. I was so very excited for this movie. The trailer made the movie look great. Barbie goes out into the real world because something is wrong in Barbie Land. I was very happy to purchase a full-price ticket for the evening show. $25, and I bought popcorn, determined to thank the theater for this bright pink extravaganza. I sat in the darkened theater with my memories of my astronaut Barbie, and the lights went down. The movie played, and as time passed, my enjoyment slowly drained away as I realized that I'd been duped. The movie was sold as light pink fun, but underneath it was dark and mean. I simply wasn't prepared for the feminist rage in this film, which really opens up in the second half of the movie. I realized belatedly that the feminist rant was the whole point of the movie. The movie uses Barbie as bait to get you in the theater, only to then accomplish the true goal of the film, which was to shout feminist propaganda at you. This meant the movie was itself a proxy for feminism. Because feminism was the true focus of the movie, not liking the movie was tantamount to not liking feminism. This had the marvelous effect of both silencing critics and bullying the film into receiving consideration for awards it didn't deserve. Because again, if you don't like this movie, you hate women. Better give it an award or else. I have wanted to comment on the film for a while, but I decided to wait and let the hubbub over the movie die down before critiquing it. This movie was radioactive, a glowing pink bombshell. But the nice thing about a movie that was pure propaganda is that its half-life is very short. Its impact relied on surprise. Once it's out of theaters and not being talked about, the film is relegated to that shelf of all-issue movies. So now I'm going to break the movie down and talk about how it failed, both as feminist propaganda and just as a movie. Then I'm going to suggest how it could have been better. I'm going to try to fix the Barbie movie. First, the synopsis of the movie. Spoilers, in case you haven't seen it. The Barbie movie begins with a replica of the opening scene from the Stanley Kubrick film 2001, which showed apes discovering how to make tools in the shadow of a black monolith. The Barbie movie instead has little girls playing with dolls in the desert. The Barbie movie has a narrator who says, "Since the beginning of time, since the first little girl ever existed, there have been dolls. But the dolls were always and forever baby dolls." Then, standing in place of the monolith, we see Barbie, and the little girls proceed to destroy their baby dolls in a violent rage, throwing off the tyranny of baby dolls in favor of Barbie. The narrator goes on to say that thanks to Barbie, girls in the real world can now be anything they want to be. I think this intro is supposed to be a statement of what the Barbies believe in Barbie Land, that by their existence, all girls' problems have been solved in the real world, and those in the Barbie world believe themselves to be the guide on how things ought to be in the real world. Then the movie proceeds right into Barbie Land, to our heroine Barbie. She lives a perfect life in a perfect house. She goes to the beach, and Ken tries to get her to notice him. She throws a party, and Ken again tries to get her to notice him, but Barbie is preoccupied by sudden, inexplicable thoughts of death. Other things start going wrong for Barbie until suddenly her feet go flat. She is horrified and goes to Weird Barbie for an explanation. Weird Barbie, the one whose hair all got cut off and had stuff drawn on her face, explains that something must have happened to Barbie's owner in the real world, and that Barbie has to go out to the real world to find out what happened. Barbie heads out to the real world, accompanied by Ken, who stowed away in Barbie's car. Once in the real world, Barbie gets heckled by construction workers and then later gets groped and punches the guy in the face, which lands her in jail. She is released, and she and Ken go to find Barbie's owner. Ken enjoys a world where he's treated like a person and is not invisible. He says that this real world is the reverse of Barbie world. Ken sees men in a gym, men in a truck, and men on horses, and they're all being taken seriously. He sees businessmen talking to each other and ignoring a woman. Barbie sees trees and kids in a park, and she tells an old woman that the old woman is beautiful. Barbie figures out where her kid goes to school, and they go to meet her there. Meanwhile, Mattel finds out that there's a Barbie on the loose in the real world, and they go to chase her down to get her to go back to Barbie Land. Barbie and Ken go to the girls' high school, and Barbie confronts the kid, thinking the kid will thank her for making the world perfect, only to have the kid shoo her out as a tool that undermines girls' self-confidence. She tells Barbie that Barbie set the feminist movement back 50 years, and ends by calling her a fascist. Meanwhile, Ken finds the library, and learns about the patriarchy. He grabs a few books and leaves. Ken tries to get a job based on the fact that he's a man, but learns that people need training, and that being a man alone isn't enough. Ken says he has to go somewhere where he can start the patriarchy from scratch, so he goes back to Barbie Land. Barbie gets picked up by the Mattel people, and they try to put her back in a box, to send her back to Barbie Land, but she escapes and meets the ghost of Ruth Handler, the creator of Barbie. Ruth tells Barbie that Barbie looks just right, and then Barbie is chased out again. Barbie's true owner, the mother of the girl at the school, grabs Barbie from the front of the Mattel building and escapes with her. Barbie realizes that the issues she'd been having were due to the mother playing with her, not the daughter. They're still being chased by the Mattel people, so Barbie suggests all three of them go back to Barbie Land, despite Barbie having just avoided going back to Barbie Land like an hour earlier. They're followed into Barbie Land by the Mattel men. When Barbie gets back to Barbie Land, the Barbies are all acting dumb and have abdicated their roles in favor of fawning over the Kens and serving them beers. In her absence, Ken has transformed Barbie Land into a patriarchy. Ken has also taken over Barbie's house, which is no longer Barbie's dream house, but is Ken's Mojo Dojo Casa house. The Barbies are now dressed as maids and cheerleaders, and seem happy to be bringing beer and snacks to the Kens. One of the Barbies says it's nice not to have to think anymore. The Kens announce that they're changing the Constitution in 48 hours. Barbie blames the human for adding complicated thoughts and feelings to Barbie Land. The mom says that change is just part of life. Barbie gives up, laying down as a doll on the ground, and hopes someone else will just fix things. The mom and the daughter begin to leave, planning to go back to the real world, but the daughter decides they have to help Barbie, and so they turn back. Meanwhile, Weird Barbie picked up Barbie and takes her back to her place. The mom and the daughter go back there and find Barbie worrying about the fact that she's not pretty anymore, and the narrator pops in to say that Margot Robbie is a bad choice for someone to make this point. Barbie worries she's not smart enough to be interesting or a brain surgeon. She says she's not good enough for anything. The mom says, "It is literally impossible to be a woman," and launches into her famous speech about the expectations of perfection that women are held to. The Barbies listening to the speech are broken free from their brainwashing, and decide that the rest of the Barbies need to be similarly liberated. They make a plan to abduct Barbies and put them in a van where the mom gives them her speech while the Kens are being distracted elsewhere. Doing this, the rebel Barbies deprogram the rest of the Barbies in Barbie Land and make a plan to distract the Kens so they forget to vote to change the Constitution. The final stage of their plan is to turn the Kens against each other, and they do this by manipulating them. The Barbies go to the Kens and pretend to be interested in them. Then, just as soon as the Kens are happy, the Barbies go and start flirting with the other Kens. The plan is to use this jealousy to have the Kens turn on each other. Somehow this works, and the Kens declare war on each other. This inexplicably involves a musical number, and the Kens go into battle on the beach. While the Kens are preoccupied, the Barbies go take back the Constitution. Ken breaks down when he finds Barbie took back the house, and she goes to talk to him. Ken admits he always loved Barbie, and Barbie tells him she has no feelings for him. Ken says that he was created for her, and she suggests he go find himself. The Barbies go back to normal, Kens go back to the shadows, and Barbie realizes she wants to be more than her normal Barbie self. Barbie says that maybe she doesn't have an end, and Ruth Handler walks in and says that she created Barbie to not have an ending. Barbie tells her she doesn't feel like Barbie anymore. Ruth walks with her and they go into a white void. Barbie says she wants to be part of the people who make meaning. She says, "I want to do the imagining. I don't want to be the idea." Ruth tells her that life is difficult and that people have an ending. Barbie asks to be human, and Ruth tells her she doesn't need to ask, and Ruth can't grant humanity anyhow. But she does insist on giving Barbie a preview of humanity in the form of a montage of grainy video of mothers and daughters set to a sentimental song by Billie Eilish. Barbie chooses to be human, and we next see her going to her very first gynecological exam. That's where the movie ends. And let me tell you, I was not happy at having been duped into watching a feminist rant. I paid to watch a feminist rant. Believe it or not, most girls don't want to be tricked into listening to some random freshman's women's studies paper. You got me, movie. I fell for your intentionally deceptive marketing. So let's start with that. Everything about the promotion of the movie was false advertising. The Barbie movie was an enormous experiment in slipping feminist propaganda to an unsuspecting crowd of people. A crowd that included, impressively, children. By hiding the message inside a film about a children's toy, they ensured some of the people exposed to the message would be kids. This deception necessarily began long before the film itself. People praised the ad campaign for Barbie as a thing of genius. I feel like a lot of the praise was really for making the Barbie movie look like a completely different movie than what it was. The official Barbie trailer highlights only the first part of the movie, where something goes wrong with Barbie and she goes to the real world to find out what happened, and hijinks ensue. The trailer was great. It hinted at everything you wanted the Barbie movie to be. It was edited in cuts that made Barbie and Ken look like a couple, and not like Ken was some sad sap. And the word patriarchy isn't mentioned once. It looked fun and witty and bubbly. In the weeks leading up to the movie, pink crossover merchandise was everywhere. It was one of the most beautifully marketed films I've ever seen. It got me gleefully in the theater, hoping for pink transcendence. And then I hit the word deprogramming, and that one word took me out of the movie. If there was ever a word I wouldn't have expected to hear in a Barbie movie, it was the word deprogramming. And then the Barbies set out in the Barbie kidnap van to catch and re-educate the other Barbies, and I was done. The movie completely lost me with the Barbie kidnap van. I am surprised at how many people just let this go. Passing it off is fine because it's in Barbie land or something. So we're good with this idea. Someone distracts your partner, shoves you in a windowless van, and forces you to listen to their manifesto, and this is fine? Re-educating Uyghurs in China is a human rights violation, but advocating for it in this film is just fine? The Barbie kidnap van is the perfect symbol for this movie, because this movie is a mind-blowingly enormous version of the Barbie kidnap van. The film lures in women with the promise of light-hearted pink Barbie antics, and once they're good and settled, rants at them for 45 minutes straight about the patriarchy. This is all by design. Every part of this film's marketing was a bait and switch, designed to lure while obscuring the true intent of this movie. The movie shown in the trailer doesn't exist. The Barbie movie uses the setup that sends Barbie out to the real world only until it gets patriarchy in Barbie land, and then it abandons any pretext that it cares about the original plot, and the rest is absolutely and completely about patriarchy in Barbie land. I have problems with this. Try as I might, I can't reconcile this ethically. I don't know how the people involved on this film reconcile this ethically. I think the idea goes that it's alright to obscure the intent and trick an audience into seeing something that is good for them. You're tricking us into eating our vegetables, so to speak. But I mean, how do you know that you're the good guy in this case? Isn't that the same justification bad guys use? If you're deliberately tricking people into watching your stuff, you're pretty clear on the notion that they wouldn't want to watch it voluntarily, or there wouldn't be the need for subterfuge. If you're essentially forcing content on people, I think you've lost the moral high ground by default. And that's true even if your forced message is good. If your message is anything less than the highest level of human altruism, this breaks into really dubious questions about coercion. What kinds of messages would you not want being distributed under false pretenses in a children's movie? Religious ones? Political ones? Messages of violence and abuse? It's easier to ask what messages you're okay with having forced on you in a kid's movie. Is there any messaging you're really willing to say is absolutely fine to hide from moviegoers? No? Is that because the very act of deception is so questionable? So what is this message that was so important it had to be hidden in a kid's movie? Ken has done patriarchy to Barbie land, brainwashing all the Barbies into stupid drones who serve the men. Women are victims of the mind-corrupting influence of patriarchy, and can only be freed by heroic savior Barbies liberating them by making them listen to truth. And by extension, we, the tender female audience, is likewise liberated by listening to the noble rant. When the film gets into patriarchy and Barbie land, the story slips almost to the level of Allegory in its need to not be subtle. Ken is patriarchy, Barbie is repressed feminism, the other Barbies represent ignorance, and Weird Barbie is nonconformity. Then Mom is the figure of virtue. You know what? Nobody likes Allegory. It's nearly always heavy-handed and one-dimensional. By falling to the level of Allegory, this movie loses a lot of its rhetorical punch. Equating patriarchy with brainwashing kicks out another leg of their argument. This movie insults its audience, calling them a bunch of brainwashed idiots. Thankfully, not everyone registered the insult, but it was definitely there. You, women, you are all brainwashed. If you've ever given a guy a foot rub or brought him anything, you're brainwashed. Brainwashed, got that? What's that? You want to disagree with me? Well, that's because you're brainwashed. If it was even just a little bit satirical, I might have let it fly. But this movie is serious. There was another more subtle issue I had with the movie. It took me a while to tease out the problem, but I finally pinned it down after watching the Barbie movie again with a guy friend. I'd thought he'd be offended by the feminist rant, but it was the exact opposite. He took the movie as a straight comedy, laughing at all the pratfalls and physical comedy. When I asked about the feminist stuff, he said he hadn't even really noticed it. This caught me off guard. How could my friend see the same movie I had as a bubblegum comedy? I realized that from his perspective, the movie challenged nothing about his worldview. From a man's point of view, everything is about as tidy and reaffirming as can be. The not even hidden message is that patriarchy rules the world. If anything, it glorifies and entrenches the concept of patriarchy. It makes patriarchy look awesome. Do you want girls to act stupid, fawn over you, and bring you stuff? Try patriarchy. So here's the second thing I don't like about the movie. I think it's sexist. To women. I saw a lot about how the film is misandrist, and yes, the film treats men like vermin, but I think the movie is also unintentionally sexist to women. Take the speech, for example. The famous speech that begins with the line, "It's literally impossible to be a woman." Look, no great speech should ever start with a statement that is provably false. It is not literally impossible to be a woman. It can sometimes be very difficult to be a woman, but it is not literally impossible. While the line sounds good, it undercuts the rest of the points because it makes it sound like a woman doesn't know how to use words. The rest of the speech just sounds like Greta Gerwig's own laundry list of complaints. If you break it down, at least 30% of the speech is about needing to be pretty. The speech is so long that it's easy to lose individual parts, but when you break it apart, you find this core of narcissism. I'm not sure worrying about being pretty would even rate in my top 10, but then I'm not Greta Gerwig. Oh my god, it's so impossible to be a woman. You have to, be pretty all the time. And rich. But that's okay, because I am rich. What kind of vapid nonsense is this? A woman goes to Barbie land, complains to the Barbies that women are expected to be pretty, and this somehow breaks them out of their mind control? Why? Barbies are very nearly the definition of pretty. That's their whole deal. That's the whole problem with them. Somehow the Barbies came down with self-consciousness along with patriarchy and are cleared of it by listening to a woman complaining about needing to be pretty. I don't understand. I don't get it. You know, they could have done something really interesting with this idea. They could have had Kens start insulting the Barbies, undermining their self-confidence, turning them into the mindless zombies who fight each other. But that would have been sad and realistic. The next 30% of the speech relates to skills needed to be a good boss, none of which have anything to do with being a woman. Believe it or not, these traits are universal. Nobody likes mean bosses, male, female, or otherwise. There are probably genderless aliens out there who hate their mean bosses. And the rest seems like basic human stuff. Interestingly, I saw Ferreira mention that the men in the crew got emotional while shooting this scene, relating themselves to all the points made, which to me means it's just plain difficult to be human. And I've personally never seen a woman have to answer for a man's behavior. I've seen women fix problems caused by men, but not answer for them. America Ferrera got an Oscar nomination for whining about how hard it is to be a woman. This is really, really sad. It was like a pity nomination. Because the speech kinda sucked when you pull it apart. It's just whining. All this movie does is whine. It whines about the patriarchy. It whines about how hard it is to be a woman. But not in an interesting way. It doesn't propose solutions. It just sits there going, oh, it's so hard to be a woman. I have to be nice and I have to be pretty. This isn't feminism. It's very nearly its opposite. There absolutely are difficulties I could point to in working as a woman, but the biggest one I've personally encountered is not being taken seriously. If you want to be taken seriously by the manlings, you have to show that you can deliver quality. The man people will still doubt you, but deliver quality often enough and even they will start to acknowledge talent. The doubt and mistrust will still be there, but complaining is not the way to seem more credible. The way to seem credible is to bring the goods. Guess what? Gerwig didn't deliver the goods. That's part of what is so frustrating about this movie. It smacks you over the head with its feminist rant, but it does such a bad job at it that it ends up sounding like its own counter-argument. Since the Barbie movie was nominated for a Best Picture Oscar, people assumed it was a good movie. You know why it didn't win any awards? Because it was a bad movie. It tries to paper over its flaws with rhetoric, but the flaws are still there. Then, their grand plan to topple the patriarchy is to look interested and then not look interested. The Barbies' final line of attack to distract the Kens is to make them jealous. That's called being a tease. I mean, that's just flirting. I never took a women's studies class because I was busy taking real college classes, but is feminism supposed to be about complaining about needing to be pretty and then manipulating men? Because this feels like a man's crude joke of what they think feminism is. Barbie doesn't do anything in the movie. She goes to the real world, comes back, and then gives up immediately when things get hard. That's it. That's the sum total of Barbie. For some reason, she decides she wants to be human at the end, and she is. So good job on that, I guess. At the end, she says she wants to be the one who has ideas, but why does she want this? She hasn't had a single idea the entire film. Why is Margot Robbie in this role? She is wasted in a role like this. Margot Robbie is a superb actress, but where she really shines is as the villain. I loved I, Tonya. I watched it twice when I rented it. Robbie as Harley Quinn? Loved it. Margot Robbie is like Jack Nicholson. She's wasted on bland roles, but she's superlative as the bad guy. Everyone wanted to know how she could not be nominated for an Oscar for this role. Easy. She was boring in it. She was fine, but never more than fine. Ryan Gosling, in contrast, put everything into a supporting role, and in doing so made himself the hero of the movie. His performance looks even better when you watch it closely. He brought intensity and passion, where everyone else brought blandness. Ken was supposed to be the villain, but thanks to a slipshod screenplay and Ryan Gosling throwing everything into the role, Ken is the only relatable character in the film. We like Ken because he's the lovelorn hero who moves mountains to achieve his goal and is treated like dirt the whole time. He's the plucky underdog in a tyrannical regime. He wants respect. He fails, but even in the attempt, he appears somewhat noble. Ken is also, incidentally, the only person who uses the word literally correctly in the whole movie. Somehow this word is used 3 times in the film. Once by the mom, saying it's literally impossible to be a woman. Once by the Mattel CEO, saying the company was literally built on women. And then by Ken, who tells Barbie after he takes over, "Watch me," both literally and figuratively. How is Ken the only one who uses this word right? Is Ken the true genius of Barbie Land? I mean, he made a beeline for the library in the real world. He takes books back to Barbie Land. While Barbie was demanding adoration from teenagers, Ken was doing research. Ken is so admirable that I've wondered if I had it all wrong, that he was the intentional hero of the movie and Barbie was the villain. I've heard this argument used as a defense of the Barbie movie, that Kens represent powerless women in Barbie Land. I think that this is true only when people need it to be true, that Kens are standing in for women when they're being oppressed, but are standing in for men when they are oppressing. But no, I think Ken was written as the bad guy, the plotting, conniving, evil villain. Kind of like Jafar in Aladdin. I'll tell you what Barbie does do a lot, though. Barbie cries. Over and over. At first it's novel, then not so much. Barbie has feelings. No logic, but she has feelings. This is used to astounding effect at the end of the film, where the movie tries to make us forget that Barbie just instigated a war and airdrops in a metric ton of last-minute sentiment. You can't be left thinking the movie was just feminist propaganda, so just before the end, when Barbie is deciding she wants to be human, Ruth shows Barbie a montage of human feelings to prepare her. But this isn't a range of human feelings. There's no anger or hatred or despair. No, this is a solid lump of mother-daughter nostalgia. Grainy videos of girls running around and moms, all shown to one of the weepiest, most manipulative songs ever placed in a film. Everything about this sequence is designed to milk sentiment, and they milk this sentiment hard. It got me the first time. The second time I was immune, and the third time I watched it, I started to notice just how cruelly manipulative it really was. This scene has no connection to the film. It's just there to inject a dose of motherhood into a movie where mothers played almost no role. It's the laziest, most low-rent form of injecting a theme, just blasting it in there at the end of the movie. But whatever, women won't notice how incredibly low effort this was, right? And it makes you forget that Barbies were being kidnapped and deprogrammed in the Kidnap-mobile, right? And just for one last capstone moment, we see Barbie in the real world going to the gynecologist. Because a woman is absolutely no more than the quality of her reproductive organs. It's really not enough to say I didn't like the Barbie movie. I found the Barbie movie repellent. I found myself cringing away from this movie, like it was something fanged and venomous. I have a severe dislike for disguised propaganda. Christians tend to resort to this tactic. I used to run into it in kids' books, and I didn't like it then, and I don't like it now. Greta Gerwig is going straight from this into adapting the Chronicles of Narnia for Netflix, and all I can imagine is a 12-hour treatment on the problem of Susan, where all other plotlines are brushed away in favor of Susan screaming at us about feminism. So, how do you fix the Barbie movie? Well, let's start with the most obvious suggestion. Just give us the movie we thought we were seeing in the first place. I think most people agree that the first 20 minutes of the movie was fine, so keep the gorgeous Barbie world, and the premise that something strange happened in the Barbie world. Something new, something they've never seen before, something that forces Barbie and Ken out into the real world. Then it really becomes a question of how you see Barbie. What she does in the real world is a direct reflection of who you think she is. To me, Barbie was always about imagining the future. All of it. The freedom of having your own car, choosing your own clothes, finding out what you want to do with your life, and maybe meeting someone. It's why Barbies exist with so many different professions. Barbies were an aspirational model of adulthood for girls. Then you have to address theme. What theme do you want for the Barbie in the real world? My first thought was to use V'ger from Star Trek the Motion Picture as an example. V'ger comes to Earth hoping to meet her creator and learn her purpose. When Barbie met the CEO of Mattel, I really thought they would have that conversation, and Barbie would learn the true scope of Barbies, that they're just dolls sold in a very large company. But this isn't good enough, even if V'ger does look like a Barbie who had her hair cut off. I needed something better. Then I started thinking of Blake Lively in The Age of Adeline. The Age of Adeline is one of those movies that looked like an inconsequential chick flick. That's all I expected when I watched it, but then it somehow inexplicably became a good movie. The Age of Adeline is a thoughtful, bittersweet reflection on time and change. So I'm going to recast Blake Lively as Barbie and Ryan Reynolds as Ken. And I'm going to use The Age of Adeline as an example of how the Barbie movie could have been. Why Blake Lively? Because she's beautiful, and when she does red carpet fashion, there are very few who can match her. Blake Lively is pure Hollywood glamour. I would have loved to see a movie that preserved some of the dignity of Barbie, that sense of possibility, and the glamour. And Ryan Reynolds is Ken for two reasons. First, because he's funny. Barbie needs to be the serious core of the movie, but Ken can be funny. Ryan Reynolds has his own patter that works. Maybe not full Deadpool, but a touch of that would have suited the Barbie world. And second, because Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively are a long-standing couple who actually seem to like each other. Watching Reynolds fall in love with Lively was the best part of the Green Lantern. Ken and Barbie should care deeply for each other. They've been together since the dawn of time. Using a married couple for Barbie and Ken gives them that feeling of familiarity. There's an example of the two of them at the 2022 Met Gala that I want to mention. Lively showed up in a copper-colored ball gown, and then, at the top of the red carpet stairs, assistants helped transform the dress, letting down all the flounces, transforming it into a gown of blue-green copper patina in honor of the Statue of Liberty for the Met's theme of Americana that year. That moment of silly magical transformation into the Statue of Liberty dress was the most fun fashion thing I think I've ever seen. And there's this famous picture of Ryan Reynolds open-mouthed when he first saw the transformed dress. It's adorable. It's a really cute thing. This is what Ken and Barbie look like in the real world. It doesn't get any closer than this. It's a transforming dress at a fancy ball and a date who's amazed. That feeling of sparkle and glamour were very much missing from the Barbie movie, despite that being a core part of Barbie's personality. The Age of Adeline is about a woman who stops aging after an accident where she crashes into a lake and is hit by lightning. This happened in 1937, when she was 29 years old. We then follow Adeline and her daughter, as Adeline does not age, but her daughter does. Adeline learns to get a new identity every 10 years and avoids all police and doctors, following an attempt to kidnap and examine her in the 50s. She has also learned to forego all attachments, leaving relationships and starting over whenever things get serious. At least not until 2015, when she is working at the Historical Society in San Francisco and meets a handsome young benefactor. The young man, Ellis, is smitten and won't take no for an answer. Adeline lets herself fall for him and goes to meet the young man's parents for the weekend. When she arrives, she realizes that Ellis's father is a man she had loved and left decades earlier. The father recognizes her instantly, despite her claiming it had actually been her mother. The father, played by Harrison Ford, is gutted seeing her again, while celebrating his own 40th wedding anniversary. He confronts her, having recognized a scar on her hand, and she prepares to leave again, and almost does, but then turns back, only to be hit by another car. When the EMTs restart her heart, the jolt starts her aging again. At the hospital, she comes clean to Ellis, wanting to finally stop running, and then realizes a year later, when she finds her first gray hair, that she will have the opportunity to grow old with him. The fascinating thing about this movie is that it's basically a vampire film, minus the blood and magic. Vampires have a tendency to act contemporary when they really should be terribly old-fashioned. The thing I love about The Age of Adeline is that Adeline retains her mannerisms from the 20s and 30s from when she was growing up. The way she speaks, the way she holds herself, is from a different era. Blake Lively is spellbinding as Adeline because she makes the woman a walking anachronism. Even when she dresses for the age and tries to fit in, she still can't help reverting to the speech she grew up with. Part of that is a really good screenplay, but a huge part of it is Lively's performance. When I was thinking about what Barbie would be like in the real world, I kept thinking about Blake Lively playing a woman who doesn't change, one who's forced to watch everyone and everything around her change or die. I realized then that the Barbie world is static. They're molded in plastic. Rather than waking up every day excited that it's perfect, Barbies would exist in a kind of perpetual stasis. Nothing ever changes. Every day is exactly the same. If something new happened in Barbie Land, I think it would be met with extraordinary curiosity. In a world where nothing changes, any change would be profound. If it required Barbie and Ken to go to the real world, The most astonishing change for them would be the simple fact that everything is different. No two people look the same. No two houses look the same. Every bush, every flower, every blade of grass is unique. It's as different from their world as it could be, and I think they would be entranced with the complexity of this new world. I would have loved to watch Barbie see the ocean for the first time. Then for plot, stick with their proposed story. Something is going wrong with the owner in the real world. I would have loved to see a woman who's in the process of failing. She's lost her job and her husband left, and she has a kid to take care of. Her mother is moving, and the woman retrieves her Barbies from childhood. She unpacks the Barbies and starts telling them her problems, and the next thing you know, they're alive. Barbie and Ken could help her get back on her feet, emphasizing that change is the best part of existence, and that it's important to embrace change. With their help, the woman finds a new job, maybe buys a new dress, and establishes some new basis of self-respect. Or something like that. Based on the trailer, I thought the Barbie movie was going to be a lot like the movie Elf. It even had Will Ferrell, so I thought this would 100% be a cheesy comedy with a reasonably upbeat happy ending. Or like the Lego movie, which also had Will Ferrell. These are both terrific movies, and I watched them both too many times. I also would have liked to see a bit more of Barbie's wardrobe. Barbie has always dressed well. She would have packed clothes for the real world, and they would all look utterly ridiculous on a full-size human. Snaps the size of dinner plates, and Velcro patches a foot long. There were plenty of jokes to be made about being human from a Barbie point of view. Being able to stand, being able to bend your knees, straighten your elbows. Eating would be a huge deal. Breathing, blinking. These are people who have never blinked before. But maybe, above all, I expected Barbie to be nice. Barbie has always had a nice smile. She never seemed vacuous to me. If I had to picture her as a person, I would have said she'd be impossibly kind and compassionate. That girl you knew in high school who was somehow both beautiful and nice, where the horrible thing was knowing she really was both. When I was talking about Disney's Snow White, I made the point that Snow White was effective simply because she was nice. Kindness is harder than cynicism. It takes courage. I always pictured Barbie having that kind of unshakable kindness. How many iterations of Barbies have been doctors, or nurses, or veterinarians, or teachers? One of the greatest disappointments of the Barbie movie was that they gave up on kindness. I would have liked to see Barbie with the simple kindness of Blake Lively's Adeline. The Barbie's owner doesn't even have to like Barbie's unshakable optimism. It can be hard to accept optimism when life has beaten you down, but this can also be a time when it's really effective. That's why I would have liked Barbie to show up at a time when things were falling apart for a woman. I think men assume that women have some magical ability to survive anything, but the ugly truth is that the world can be a horrible place when you're out of money. Also, I would have liked to see Ken act as Barbie's trusted friend and longtime love. They could kiss for the first time, and it would have been a real kiss. Barbies don't kiss, they just kind of smash together. Making Ken lovelorn and ignored by Barbie was one of the great injustices of the film. As Ken said, he was made for Barbie. Like Eve from Adam's rib, Ken was created as a companion for Barbie. He has been with her since almost the beginning. There is nobody she would trust more. Life is insanely long, and you can't get through it by yourself. There is absolutely no point in trying to pretend that we are all self-reliant little islands. Much like admitting that kindness is important, it's just as vital to admit that love is important. Trying to insist that we can all manage on our own is ridiculous. You have to be able to be your own person, but meeting someone else doesn't mean you stop being you. Hollywood has gotten all stuffy about romance, as if it belittles women, but it's actually the opposite. Loving someone is ennobling. Hollywood will come back to this because it's a fundamental part of human existence. But that's what I think. How about all of you? What did you want to see in the Barbie movie? What did you think? Let me know. Thanks for listening. This is Rose with Rose Colored Movies.